One of the major problems with Meghan Markle's podcast's archetypes is that people are finding it nigh on impossible to finish a single episode. And I, for one, believe that that is a tragedy. Reading the comments under some of my videos, it seems that people's main complaints are essentially they don't find what is being spoken about or the way it's being spoken about by Meghan and her guests engaging at all. And they find it boring, and they find their voices annoying, and they find that what is being said is vacuous and inane, meaningless and patronising. But therein lies the magic. Why can't people see that that's why it's so brilliant?
What the hell is wrong with you people?
It's so bad that it's good. If you can just learn to ignore the topic of the podcast and the host and her guests, you will see how Archetypes is actually a work of genius. And I'm going to make another attempt to prove it today. Meghan Markle ended her last episode last week with a poem. She's a real life David Brent.
Just remember, you're not alone. And before I go, I wanted to just share one last thought. So over a year ago, maybe even more than that, a really close friend of mine,
Ghislaine Maxwell?
She texted me this piece of writing, and it has since remained a North Star for me on this show.
Now, of course, most of you have not yet heard the poem, and oh boy, it's the shittest poem I've ever heard. And it's her North Star. It's her guiding light on this podcast, yeah. It's about as deep as the podcast. Very fitting that it should be the North Star of Archetypes.
In fact, I read it on our very first launch call with the team to kick off Archetypes, types. And at the end of this heavier episode...
Heavy episode. It really wasn't heavy. She put like a trigger warning in at the beginning of this episode. It really wasn't that heavy. For those of you that haven't listened to the whole episode, so all of you, it was as dull as they come. There was nothing heavy in it.
I wanted to share it with you too.
So here it comes, the really deep, meaningful poem. The North Star of Archetypes. Fuck me.
This is Breathe by Becky Hemsley.
Looking through some old poems I used to do.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
I didn't know, yeah.
She sat at the back, and they said she was shy. She led from the front, and they hated her pride.
Well, that's not very fair, is it? I mean, she can't win. If she sits at the back, they call her shy, and if she sits at the front, everyone hates her because she's all proud. And what is a girl to do?
They asked her advice, and then questioned her guidance.
You never question a woman's guidance. If you ask for a woman's advice, you take it, okay? It's not a suggestion, it's an order, but they're also not bossy.
They branded her loud, then were shocked by her silence.
And you think that she means branded figuratively. No, she means with a cattle branding iron. They went, there won't be any loud ladies in our town. And they're all shocked when she was silent, tending to her blistering wounds with a damp cloth.
When she shared no ambition, they said it was sad. So she told them her dreams, and they said she was mad.
Right, I know a lot of women watch these videos about Meghan. So I want to ask, what do you think? Do you think women are more discouraged? They're discouraged from their dreams and ambitions more so than men. I mean, for me, growing up where I grew up in England, it didn't seem that way to me in my generation. I don't know if you're older than me, if you're younger, if you're about the same age. What did you think in your country, in your generation, were women or are women or girls more discouraged or they're discouraged away from their ambitions more so than boys? I think for me, if anything, it felt the other way around, but if anything. I started reading yesterday the Tenant of Wildfell Hall, and in the third chapter there's like an argument between two of the characters about how to bring up boys and girls, and it was a much more cut and dry back in the 1860s. Talking about how obviously a girl is treated like a rare flower in a hothouse. You don't want her exposed to any danger. This mother is a single mother, and Miss Graham doesn't want her son coming up against any trouble. She won't let him drink wine. He's about 4 or 5 years old, and they'll think he's a bit of a pussy because he can't drink wine. They were different times. She doesn't want him drinking wine, and there's like this debate between her and the main character, Mr. Malcolm, as to what should be done with a boy. You know, the best way to keep a boy away from vices is to expose him to them so he can make his own decisions, yet at the same time they don't think the same thing about a girl. So the supposition there is what? That women are more feeble-minded, they can't avoid vices even if they're exposed to them and they have someone explain to them. Do we still have that mindset? I don't think so. I don't know. What do you think?
They told her they'd listen, then covered their ears.
Oh, ladies, don't you hate it when the patriarchy does that? They say, go on, I'll listen to your problems. And you go, no, I'm not listening. What does that even mean?
And gave her a hug while they laughed at her fears.
I froze your tears and made a dagger and stabbed it in my cock forever.
Gave her a hug while they laughed at her fears. Now, if that doesn't ring true for all of you guys, I mean, can we get an honest show of hands, right? All of the men who are watching now, all 5 of you, can we just own what we are for once, right? Who of you can say, honestly, that you haven't been hugging a girl, right? At some point in your life, you're hugging a broad, and you're looking over her shoulder at your mates at the bar, and you're just like, she's so fearful. Idiots. I hate her. Oh, look at all her fears.
And she listened to all of it, thinking she should be the girl they told her to be best as she could.
It stays there like Excalibur. Are you my Arthur? Say you are.
Good.
But one day she asked what was best for herself, instead of trying to please everyone else.
What was best for herself instead of trying to please everyone else? You know, I think this is it. This is the problem with a lot of people who advocate for, I don't know, whether it be greater equality between the genders or greater equality between the races. A lot of the time it seems like that the advocates for these particular causes are far too often very self-centered, narcissistic individuals. Which is not to say that the cause in itself is wrong or bad. You know, as with the topic that's been discussed in this awful poem, I mean, absolutely, there is a debate to be had there about how a woman's life experience is different to a man's purely because of the fact that she is a woman and not a man. But that belief that it's unique to women, that they have expectations on them, they have to perform in a certain way, they have to behave a certain way because of society, and can't always 100% of the time think about what's good for them. To believe that that is unique to your sex, I mean, the only person who thinks like that is a spoilt brat.
So she walked to the forest and stood with the trees. She heard the wind whisper and dance with the leaves.
Take this cool, dark, steeled blade. Steal it, sheathe it in your lake.
She spoke to the willow, the elm, and the pine, and she told them what she'd been told time after time. She told them she felt she was never enough. She was either too little or far, far too much. Too loud or too quiet, too fierce or too weak, too wise or too foolish, too bold or too meek. Then she found a small clearing surrounded by firs, and she stopped, and she heard what the trees said to her.
I'd drown with you to be together.
And she sat there for hours, not wanting to leave. For the forest said nothing. It just let her breathe.
Must you breathe? 'Cause I need heaven.
So there you have it. The real life David Brent.